Welcome to Stuff They Didn't Teach Me in Sunday School. You gotta be kidding me. Have you heard that before? I think I would be saying that with the contents of chapter 9 of Acts Gospel. You gotta be kidding me. Acts chapter 9 is the conversion of Saul. You gotta be kidding me. You're gonna use this guy, I might say to God? And God says, yeah. Got a plan. Acts chapter 9, verse 1. But Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues at Damascus. This guy, he's a fanatic, I'm telling you. I guess he can't find enough Christians to kill and persecute in Jerusalem. He goes to the high priest and says, would you give me letter introductions so I can show up in the Jewish community in Damascus and root out the Christians up there? He's got to go somewhere else to find enough Christians to go after. He gets the letters and he heads on his way. You know this story. On the way, we don't know exactly where it was. It says as he approached Damascus, so probably closer to Damascus than Jerusalem. A blinding light, a voice, and Saul's on the ground. The voice says, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And Saul's answer I find is interesting. Who are you, Lord? He knows. He said, I'm Jesus whom you're persecuting. Rise and enter the city, and you'll be told what you are to do. I want you to notice what's not here, because the title of this is Stuff They Didn't Teach You in Sunday School. This lesson is maybe going to be unteaching you stuff they did teach you in Sunday school. One of the things most of us learned in Sunday school, and there's a whole generation of us, I think, that believe this, is that Paul's name was changed from Saul to Paul at this conversion experience. Go read that. It's not there. It doesn't say anything about his name being changed. I don't think his name was changed at all. Actually, Luke will call him Saul up until the day he starts his first missionary journey and goes into Gentile territory. And then he will say Saul, who is also called Paul, and from then on Luke will call him Paul. Saul grew up really with a foot in each world. He grew up in a Greek world with Jewish parents. He grew up as a Pharisee, but he probably had both names through his whole life, Saul and Paul. Paul means little or tiny. We might call him tiny. The way anybody called tiny today really probably is not very little. Only guys I know called tiny are great big guys. But this may mean that Saul was of smaller stature. And from all evidences, he lived his life with both names. So forget that thing that you learned about his name being changed on the road to Damascus. It's not there. And I know some of you will go back and check that out because you're just absolutely convinced it is. But go back and look. Saul goes into the city about the same time. In verse 10, there was a disciple in Damascus named Ananias. The Lord said to him in a vision, Ananias, and he said, Here I am, Lord. And the Lord said to him, Rise and go to the street called Straight, and inquire in the house of Judas for a man of Tarsus named Saul, for behold, he's praying, and he has seen a man named Ananias come in and lay his hands on him so that he might regain his sight. Well, the loose translation of the next part is, whoa, wait a minute. You want me to go meet Saul? The same Saul that's killed saints in Jerusalem and now has letters to come up here and kill Christians in Damascus. You want me to go meet this guy? I imagine Ananias is thinking, I don't have a death wish. This is not something I want to do. Verse 15, the Lord said to him, Go, for he's a chosen instrument of mine to carry my name before the Gentiles and kings and the sons of Israel. Notice that list. To carry my name before Gentiles and kings and the sons of Israel. The nation of Israel comes last on that list. Now, Paul, whenever he goes into a community, almost always goes to the synagogue first and proclaims the gospel there, but you also get the feeling that his great love is to go out into that community and proclaim that gospel to Gentiles, because he gets kicked out of the synagogue pretty quickly most of the time, and he's out there proclaiming to the Gentiles. He will call himself Paul, an apostle to the Gentiles. He recognizes that his call is to bring that gospel message to a much wider audience than just the Jewish nation. Paul is quite a story. He does go see Ananias. Ananias believes what God has called him to be. He, even though he lost his sight in that conversion experience, he does regain his sight. He spends some time then in Damascus with the disciples who I imagine kind of gave him a pretty wide berth at first. But then the Jews decide he's a turncoat in verse 23, and they have a plot to kill him, and they have to let Paul down in a basket over the wall. He goes to Jerusalem and is not very welcome there. Well, go figure. He's been killing Christians. He's been responsible for the death of Christians, and now he shows up in Jerusalem and says, "Hey, guys, I'm one of you." Yeah, this might be a plot to infiltrate. There's a guy by the name of Barnabas there that kind of takes him aside and becomes his partner, his sponsor, if you will, with the disciples, and gets him accepted a bit with the disciples in Jerusalem. Some people think God changed Paul on that road to Damascus. I would argue God did not change him at all. God turned him around 180 degrees, pointing him in another direction. But that man who was so fanatical about killing Christians was just as fanatical about spreading that gospel. He used the character of the Apostle Paul to bring about that ripple effect in his church. And Paul, the fanatic, was a fanatic before and a fanatic after. He just became a fanatic about a whole different thing. The goal of introducing people to their Savior, Jesus Christ.